All through last evening, I sat and watched with mixed emotions the exchange of prisoners and hostages between Israel and Hamas, mediated largely by the Qatari agents, especially the foreign minister of Qatar. The question is being very widely debated whether the present ceasefire, now envisaged to last 4 days, will be extended, given the prospect that for each day's extension of ceasefire, very likely 10 more hostages will be released by the Hamas. And these continuous extensions would then morph into an enduring ceasefire, and that would perhaps be the end of this bloodshed and this unspeakable suffering to which particularly the people of Gaza are subjected. I'm afraid I don't share the optimism expressed in various quarters, and let me tell you why. First of all, I think we must start our thinking from the beginning of this episode. Why was this massive attack on the unarmed civilians of Israel mounted? It was mounted for a particular purpose. It is just not a sort of spontaneous extremist or terrorist activity. It is a cold-blooded, calculated attempt behind which there are very important cross-border calculations and strategies. To me, the key to understanding the situation is the increasing camaraderie, if you like, or increasing mitigation of hostilities between Israel and Muslim countries, Arab countries. A development which the officers or the leaders of the Iranian Republic are bound to view with great concern. Because if this is allowed to go on, the outcome would be that Iran will be isolated to a large extent. Of course, Iran can move into the Soviet camp, which it has already done, and rehabilitate itself in that sense. But the idea that the relationship between Israel and other Arab countries could be normalized is something that Iran simply cannot accept. So, what happened on the 7th of October was certainly masterminded. And the situation in Gaza cannot return to normalcy so long as those calculations remain addressed. And I don't think those calculations can be addressed under the present scenario, because there is no power which has the ability to address that issue. If anyone thinks that the present mayhem in Gaza is Palestine Jewish confrontation, they're terribly mistaken. So it's obvious that the ceasefire will last 4 days as envisaged now, and the exchange of prisoners and hostages will take place as envisaged now. Maybe it could be extended by a few more days, but I'm extremely skeptical if this will eventuate into a ceasefire, so to speak, and the normalization of relationships between the people of Gaza and the people of Israel. It just cannot happen. I'm equally skeptical of the two-nation theory. I don't think Israel and Palestine can coexist as two sovereign, independent nations. Every consideration is against it. and the international community is fooling itself in believing that it is possible. Unfortunately, no satisfactory end is in sight. The only possibility is this, that war resumes sooner than later, and greater misery than we have witnessed so far is heaped on the people of Hamas, people of Gaza, and this would result in the Lebanon border becoming active. Hezbollah will get involved. So tension or armed conflict will spread into Lebanon. And the Yemeni Houthis will do what they can to create further tensions. And every agency under the influence of Iran will become active. So I am actually envisaging a greater period of bloodshed in the days ahead, and at the end of which perhaps a sense of realism will dawn on the people both of Israel and of Gaza, that there is no alternative to peace. I don't think we have reached that stage yet. The people of Israel are bound to suffer much, much more. In the next 4 or 5 years, I fear for Israel, and I fear for Jews all over the world. I've said this before and I reiterate. What has begun now is something that cannot be easily contained. The prospects are grim, horrible, frightening, as much for the Jews as for the Palestinians. Unfortunately, that's the case. And if at all a radical shift in attitude happens, history tells us it happens only in the wake of massive suffering. Suffering that will force people to realize that the path of violence does not pay, it is a bus ride to nowhere, and that there is no alternative to peace and harmonious coexistence. In my reading, this particular unfortunate part of the world's geography is far from such a realization. Both parties, the Palestinians and the Jews, are adamant that they can win the day with the power of destruction that they command, and that violence alone pays, unless and until this blind faith in the efficacy of violence is renounced. This region will not know peace. We have to be particularly foolish and naive in assuming that peace can return to a place even as absolute faith in the efficacy of violence rules the roost. It just cannot happen. It doesn't stand to reason. Unfortunately, there is no voice heard which tells the people with any degree of spiritual, intellectual authenticity that violence does not pay. We don't have a Mahatma Gandhi. Disappointingly, even Pope Francis is not able to make an appropriate utterance. He states his pious intentions and he expresses his unhappiness about bloodshed, and he describes the present situation as terrorism, etc. That doesn't help. The fact is that there is a need to educate the two antagonists regarding the way of peace and the way of violence, the way of life and the way of death. That's the spiritual mission. And on this occasion, I'm reminded of the address that Moses makes, his very last address to the people of Jews after having led them for 40 years through the wilderness. Knowing that he would not enter the promised land, he gives them the last bit of counsel. And he says, "This day I place before you the way of life and the way of death. Choose life." That's the message. Choose life. What we have seen so far is nothing but the death dance of aggression. You know, as I sat watching the exchange, my mind was actually almost totally concentrated on the people who have already perished. To those who are dead, what exchange? To those who have lost their life, whatever happens on the surface of the earth makes no sense. For them, these things have not happened. There is no exchange, there is no hope, there is no peace, there is no future, there is nothing. So, for whose sake are we fighting? Therefore, I am totally convinced that this is utter folly. History tells us that no problem has been solved through violence. Yet, humankind finds it difficult to renounce their faith in massive violence. Even today, ask any expert in international politics, international affairs, they'll tell you that there is no alternative to war. At the same time, when war begins, they will begin to lament the destruction caused by war. This is what I call pure sentimentality. Either you want peace or you want war. You can't have faith in war and then argue for peace. Choose between war and peace. You can't choose war and peace. So that's where we are. I'm happy for the people who have been spared, happy for the people who have been reunited with their loved ones through this exchange. I hope that the rest of the exchange program goes as planned. And I also hope that more people, more hostages are delivered from both sides. And even hoping against hope, I hope and pray that further bloodshed may be avoided, though I have to say, the logic of the situation gives me no ground to hope. But then, hoping against hope is the duty of those who believe that with God everything is possible. Thank you.